I was aware of the European movement and indeed supported it from an early age.
And I think it's really important that the European movement continues to build and to have that voice.
It's worth reflecting that the European movement has been there through thick and thin.
European Movement UK on February 16th, 1949 was pulled together by a group of men and women and many parliamentarians, largely forged by Winston Churchill and Duncan Sands. What do you remember from those days?
What you see in all these movements, that they were all coming together to find a way of administering Europe in a more peaceful, harmonious, profitable and prosperous way.
Knowing that your dad set up the United European Movement back in the late 40s, how does that make you feel, knowing everything that has come from it?
It makes me feel very proud, and it makes me feel that there were people at that time who had a vision for the future.
I do remember joining in 1984, the local branch, and it was a very warm welcome. Of course, at that time, we were in the EU. Our relationship was becoming closer.
The UK had a very positive role within the EU, and it seems to me very tragic that at the time that we were really actually making a success of our EU membership, we then had the referendum and decided to leave the organisation.
I stood there with other Brits and other MEPs on the steps of Parliament at midnight on the 30th of January. We were all in tears. Awful, awful night.
I do remember waking up on the morning, that lovely morning, and just being like, what? No, that's not right.
What's happened since 2016 is not just the Brexit and the shock of that, but coming a couple of years later, the complete departure from the single market, the customs union.
The European movement has played an enormous role in building some of the biggest agreements and collaborations as part of the EU. And yeah, I think it did definitely spark quite a lot of self-reflection. I don't think I'm the only person in that. I think probably there were a lot of people who had taken their connection to the EU for granted.
I think people feel cheated. There is no getting away from the fact that our generation, the generations to come, have lost out so much, and integration is the only way forwards.
I think we're at a very important part of what will be history right now. I don't think it's changing as fast as we would like, but it is changing, especially now with the cost of living crisis. Before, it was so distant from the average person that they just thought, oh, this won't affect me. Whereas now I think they're starting to see those effects slowly kind of get into their day-to-day lives.
I think that we can get a positive engagement in trading and investment relationships, and once more establish ourselves, and this is vital, as the gateway to the single market.
We will obviously have to get back into a closer, more logical relationship with the EU, and I think the European movement, is the only game in town in promoting those values.
You've got a lot of different parties now trying to look to a much more integrated future, and I think that is the only way forwards.
We need absolute clear determination, greatest amount of coherence, great amount of cohesion, and understanding that we stand and we fall together.
By showing that history, the European movement can then play a big part in yet again getting us back where we belong, basically. And I think it's about just kind of facing the facts of where we are and showing people what life could be again.
I think the realisation is very much that Brexit isn't working, Brexit is incredibly damaging, and that the best way to work on some of the issues that we have in the UK is to be part of the European Union.
I think our route back will be in chunks, joining Erasmus, joining Horizon.
It will be a lot of discussions, political discussions, those slow steps. But I think once that ball starts rolling, I think it'll be quite, well, it'll be bigger steps going forward. I think it's just the small steps to get that ball rolling.
Having a harmonious, mutually beneficial relationship in so many spheres, whether it's politics, trade, the environment, defence or whatever, that should be pursued as vigorously as possible, and I think the European movement can help with that.
The audience is there because the younger generation know they've been deceived, they have been excluded in a way they don't want to be excluded, and as they become increasingly vocal and numerous in the democratic process, they will want change back.
We're going to see more and more, I think, of that focus and that interest and that political appetite for people to be able to either reform or strengthen existing relationships. So I think the future is that we're going to become more and more significant.